This is Jenny and Dieter Randolph, and welcome to our first Wisdom Wednesday. This is our opportunity to make a deeper dive into our Sunday lesson that was happening this past Sunday. As most of you know, if you watched our intro video, you know that that was the beginning of week 1. And this is just a really nice opportunity to get to talk a little bit more in depth about what you were talking about, what the scripture meant, and some of the points that I want to bring up with you, obviously. So if you haven't seen the Sunday worship service, stop this video right now, go back and watch that, and then rejoin us and come and join this discussion with us, because that's going to give you the best benefit, I think. So my first question to you is, why did you choose the title Marked?
Excellent. And actually this question has come up a lot. The idea is we're at the beginning of our journey of getting ready for Easter. And so at the beginning of Jesus' journey, there's this moment, and in fact several moments, but this is a key one, where he is really marked. In other words, he is on this path. The die has been cast, he's crossed the Rubicon, whatever metaphor you want. He's in this. And what I want to bring out is, this is a story about Jesus' progression.
Okay.
But because you're the hero of every story in Scripture, that's part of the secret to unlocking the meaning. It's one of the things I talked about in the lesson.
Yeah, everybody in the Bible is basically something that is representing something that is in your heart or your mind.
Exactly so.
Right.
So, this is also, it's not only a story about you, it's also a story about you. And the deal is, as a child of God, you're meant for greatness. You are marked for great things. And that includes the stuff that you're working on, health and prosperity and healing and a life that makes sense. And maybe even big things like curing cancer, saving the world, writing the great American novel. Big or small, you're marked for something because, quite simply, God doesn't operate by accident. So, in order to get to a place of healing, the first step is to decide that you're on this path. Jesus is on this path by virtue of the fact that he's in the temple. Of course, there he is, right? So in the same way, the beginning of your journey is to decide, you know what, I'm on this. I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this thing. You don't have to know everything. This is about making a start in this journey. So you're marked for it. Decide that you're marked for it, agree with it, and you're on your way. That's the point of the talk.
Well, and I was going to say, that is an amazing summation of the goal of the week, of this first week, is do something that you are marked for. You don't have to know everything, but start that journey. Have that desire on your heart and take it just a step further. Don't just think about it, right?
Right. Well, the elevator pitch for the talk would be something like, you're marked for great things, but in order to live up to your end of the bargain, you've got to have a bigger idea about God. That's really the two things. In order to fulfill what God has in mind for you, you've got to have a better idea in your mind of God, to sort of turn it around. And so all of it is about reform your God thought. I even said that in the talk. Get a bigger idea about what God has in store for you, who you are, what you deserve, and that kind of thing. And you're on your way.
I was going to say there's a couple of things that really hit me, through the lesson as I was listening to you. And, most of you know, we've been married for a really long time, but there's something that does happen when he gets up there and he is speaking this truth. I hear him on a different level. You really are, you're not just my husband up there. You really are ministering to my heart. And so I really do try to listen and try to get everything that I can out of it. But I think one of the things, there's a couple of things. I think there were 3 things that hit me. And I think the first thing that got me was this idea about you're already living the life that you're choosing. Oh,
you're already living the life you expect.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And so I was like, ooh, and that one really hurt a little bit.
Well,
if I'm honest, because all of the worry and all of the anxiety and all of the stuff that comes up on your day-to-day life, your week-to-week, even your month-to-month, year-to-year, whatever, you're talking about habits that maybe you don't want to break, habits that maybe you are so used to, and that change. And when you reminded me, and I won't speak for anybody else, but I'm sure that I'm not the only one in the
Well, I can tell you for sure that when I said that, it landed with the people in the room in a way that seemed like, obviously I'm not a mind reader, but it seemed like the same thing that you're describing. It was kind of because that's part of the deal. You know, it's sometimes feels really comfortable to hang on to an expectation of the world is a mean place, for example. And that's just the way the cookie crumbles and things are bad. If that is your end-all be-all expectation, well, secretly, that's really what your idea about God is. Because your big idea about God, your ultimate concern, as Paul Tillich might say, is the thing you live under. So if my big idea is the world's a mean place, I'm going to live a life that matches that expectation. So if you want to change things, yeah, there's behavioral things you can do. You can get on a good to-do list habit. There's productivity books. But at the end of the day, it's not about the minute actions. It's about changing your expectation, about reforming your big idea. And then you will start to modify your patterns of living to fit your bigger idea. It never works the other way. And everybody watching this knows that. You can try little things to change your diet, and that's great, to change your conduct, and that's great, to read different books. But at the end of the day, if you're laboring under the idea that God doesn't like you, there's nothing you can do that'll be permanent. And as soon as you quit reading the book, you'll go back to the old habits.
I saw something on Facebook that was really kind of amazing. And I don't know who authored it. I don't know, but it was just one of those things where you're passing it. Well, it was something that said, and I'm going to get this totally wrong and I'm going to butcher it, but it said, you don't know the pilot who's flying your plane, and yet you sit down and you trust that he's doing the job. You don't know the doctor who is going to help you or to do the surgery on you, but you trust that. And the question basically was like, how do you not trust God to take care of you?
Yeah.
And I loved that. And it was like, and it reminded me of what you were talking about, this bigger idea is like we have so much faith in a lot of things that we don't know. We even trust other drivers and we don't know them personally. We don't know what's going on, and yet we are having that faith. And so this bigger idea, this bigger umbrella, that we can't even have this big idea about this ultimate concern, this ultimate being, is really funny to me.
Well, and it comes down to, just as you said, well, Paul said, we walk by faith and not by sight. Think about how many things in your day-to-day life are a matter of faith. Faith in other drivers, faith in the internal combustion engine. You don't even know how any of that works. And yet, when it comes to things like love, people got to have all kinds of evidence. And the thing is, your fear is exactly what's keeping you from your love. You know? And so it's about changing the way you do it. But the good news is, just as you're saying, it involves using muscles that you've been exercising all along. You're good at faith. I don't know how plumbing works, and yet I'm grateful for it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things.
You could just go down the list.
Everywhere.
So the second thing that I wanted to ask you is this idea about forgiving God. And I know kind of what you meant, but I want you to go a little bit more in depth because I think I know, but I'd like to really hear it from you.
Well, I'm grateful for the chance to sort of double down on that because I think it's a really big concept and it's one that people don't know a lot about. You know, everybody knows, if you're watching this, you've been around this, you know forgiveness by itself is a virtue. We talked about the idea that everybody's working under some big belief system. And you don't fix the problem by fixing the behavior, you fix it by fixing the idea. We've talked about this. The example I want to give is it's like working with a kid. The kid's acting up because they want attention. If you punish the acting up, you're just validating, here's how I pay attention. You're going to make it worse. But if
you're telling them that the bad behavior is what you expect and what you want.
Exactly. But instead of that, if you go, okay, wait a minute, the big idea you're working on is you want attention. I'm going to find a better way to give you attention. You will find that the acting up behavior starts to dissipate. Same thing. You can forgive other people by going, look, you're working on let's inspire a big idea. You forgive other people. You know that's important. You know you're supposed to forgive yourself. And it's the same deal. I need to work on having a bigger idea. I didn't do it so good last time, but I'm going to do better. Forgive yourself. You know those two things are important, but those are just two parts of, it's like the fire pyramid. You need three in order to have a life that makes sense, to have a better relationship with God, the whole thing. So you forgive other people, you forgive yourself. The other part of it is you have to forgive God. That's a big deal. That means a couple of things. One of the things it means is I'm not going to blame big things for my misfortune or my problems, my bad stuff. Part of that means you're not allowed to say, oh, dumb luck, or that's the way the world is. Because what you're really doing is saying, I have no power to make it better. So part of it is blaming God. Like I said, call it luck, call it whatever you want. If it's a big thing, you're really talking about God, even if you don't use the brand name. But I'm not going to do that anymore, because here's the thing. We have to believe that God wants the best for us. The Bible says so over and over again. You know in your heart it's true. So that's a bogus assertion. It's a cop-out. So first of all, I'm not going to blame God.
Okay.
I'm going to find ways to make it better.
All right.
Because I know God's already got this for me. I'm going to get out of the way. That's forgiveness. But that's the other part of it, is it has to do with learning how to pray in such a way where you can talk to God honestly. Get rid of the these and thous and the, William Shakespeare speech when you pray with God. God knows your heart. This is about going, God, I didn't think much of you. I didn't think you could handle my problem.
And that's really that's really what it boils down to, is that our ego gets in the way, and we think we've been sent this or given this, or, God only gives you what you can handle idea. And that didn't ever sit right with me.
Well, I gotta tell you, I can't.
And that's exactly what you're talking about when you're talking about blaming God. It's just like, all right, God did this, and now I have to handle it. Thanks, God.
Yeah. Well, it's the God did it. That's part of forgiveness. And the other part is, once again, I can't tell you how many times people have come to me and said, hey, I really need some advice about, and it'll be, finances or love life or physical healing or whatever. And I will say something like, well, are you praying about that? Are you giving that over to God? Oh, well, no, because how does this work?
Like step one.
It's
right?
It's like going to the doctor and not telling the doctor about your rash. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whatever. So whatever it is.
Yeah.
So the idea is, get to the place where you recognize that God can handle this. In fact, whatever your problem is, it's not a problem for God. Maybe you're working through some healing. And that's really happening in your body. But God ain't sick.
Right.
So I'm going to get to the place where I recognize that, you know what, God, I have a big enough idea of you that I know you've got this. And that has to do with forgiveness, because what you're really saying is, God, maybe I used to think you weren't up to it. And now I'm going to have a bigger idea about you. I forgive this situation.
Right.
That's at the core. And it's not something that gets talked about enough. But at the end of the day, that's the formulation. If you have a small experience of life, you probably have a small idea of God. And that's not a guilt and blame thing. That doesn't help. But instead, it's an opportunity to really open up, to really let go.
Right.
And that's how you begin this journey. That's how you recognize what you're marked for.
Well, I love the idea of threes. We often work in 3s and 5s and 7s and 12s because a lot of times it's all over the Bible, those numbers that we see.
And I think there's something in the human psyche that responds to those patterns.
Yeah, but I've always thought of 3 days or 3 whatever, the Trinity. I've always thought of it is however long it's going to take.
Yeah.
It's not that the sun comes up and down for 3 times. It's however it's going to take. It's the completion, like
Jonah
you said.
Jonah was in the belly of the whale for as long as it took.
Exactly. And I do love that. So whenever I think of 3s, I think of completion, and it's not of our human construct of time. It's however long that's going to take. But I also love
how long does it take you to get out of the way?
Right, exactly. Yeah. But I love the idea of working in 3s of forgive others, forgive yourself, forgive God, and I think that is really helpful for me, because it's easy to remember.
Sure.
And it's easy to, not that we need to make things easily digestible,
but it happens
it's a nice numerical way that we can do it. Speaking of 3s, you kind of ended the lesson with 3 steps.
Yeah.
You included them throughout. So I just want to briefly remind everybody that's watching what those 3 steps are, because I think the overall goal for this week is start something, be marked, go out and do something, and you start with that bigger idea. You don't know everything, but let's get a bigger idea, let's be marked, let's get on the path. And that's such a wonderful week 1 goal.
Right.
So here are the steps, right?
Yeah, and this is a good way to kind of wrap the whole thing up. Basically, there's 3 things to think about. And part 1 is, remember, this is not about your ego expectations. This is about having God's bigger idea be what you're open to. So the first step is to love something so much that it pulls you out of your comfort zone. Doesn't matter what it is. It can be, like in the example, Mary and Joseph loved this baby Jesus. It can be that. I love my work. I love my art. I love my... Find something, and once again, this isn't about embracing dysfunction, and we'll talk more about that in coming weeks. This is about find something that inspires real love, the kind of love that tells the truth, for example, stable, healthy love, all of that. Find something you love so much that it pulls you out of your comfort zone, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. Everybody knows when you do something and you lose track of time, for example, you know what it is. So find something you love so much. Second step is recognize that your journey has been a spiritual journey all along. It may feel like you're working on material things like success and money, and that's great. But the truth is, you know miserable people who have a lot of money. It ain't about the physical thing. Instead, you're working on a spiritual goal of something like freedom or security, for example. The more you can get in touch with the spiritual end of it, just as in the story, Mary and Joseph start looking in material places. But as soon as they look in the temple, that's where they find Jesus. Your message is start looking in the spiritual place. Wait a minute, I've been looking for a spiritual thing all along, and that's the I could have had
just
a V8
skip
moment.
that step. Skip the step of doing all the little things that you do on the outside. Now, I always say that sometimes starting with a ritual like getting up in the morning and having that prayer time and sitting in the quiet, if that is a physical ritual that gets you to a spiritual place, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But just remember, it's not about where you are, what you're doing. It's the bigger idea.
Well, here's the test. Here's the test. Do whatever helps you.
Yeah.
You know, but the test is, am I doing this to try to make God happen? Or am I doing this to try to let God happen? Because God already is, right?
Yeah, make your space to let God happen, right? I love that.
What do you need to do to actively make room? To Marie Kondo your heart, you know, whatever that takes. Absolutely, absolutely. And then finally, when we get to this place, we recognize that the third step, and this is the one that I really want people to chew on, the thing that is stressing you out is the key to your liberation.
Right.
I'm going to say that again. The thing that's stressing you out is the key to your liberation. The example I used in the talk is Mary and Joseph are freaking out because Jesus is God's kid that they're taking care of. So, but wait a minute. We're freaking out because it's God's kid. Maybe we start by looking in God's house. Right. This is the truth for everything. If you're worried about money, think about that. There's the seed. You need to work on your money stuff. Right. And I know that seems straightforward, but I got to tell you, there's a lot of people that are, I'm really stressed about my job, therefore I'm going to clean out the garage. Well, that's not going to help the thing. Right. But I feel better about that. I'm freaking out about my love life, but I don't know how to deal with that, so instead I'm going to play Candy Crush on my phone because I get the same serotonin hit. That doesn't scratch the itch. Right. The thing that is your source of stress is also your source of liberation. So you kind of lean into the part, what itches in your heart, scratch the itch. Well, we like to say, give what you need. Same thing. And I think that same principle. Absolutely. So if you are worried about something, you know, if you're worried about your love life, if you're worried about the money, give what you need, because the act of releasing that and letting that flow, because I always think of it kind of as a clog. Yeah, and you kind of unclog that because you're giving it, because it's the one thing that you're scared to give. Right? And I think you've hit on something really important, and that is, in order to scratch that itch, transform it into a giving moment. Absolutely. Say it again. Transform it into a giving moment. So, I'm worried about, I'm not receiving enough love. Wait a minute. Okay, so I found the seed. It's love. Right. Freaking out about it. Yeah, right. It's love. So I'm going to transform that into a giving moment. So I'm going to learn how to be more giving with my love, with my time that I spend with people. It's not just a romantic. I'm going to find things in the world that I love. I'm going to find the best cup of coffee in town. I'm going to find those moments to express genuine, honest love. And you'll get better at getting done with the things you need to get done at. So find a way to turn it into a giving moment, and you are on your way into something bigger. I love that. So thank you for joining us for our very first Wisdom Wednesday. We hope that you enjoyed having this little bit of coffee with us and sitting down and just discussing these ideas. I know you and I could talk about this stuff all day long. But that being said, if you really loved this video, if you found it compelling, please go ahead and share it. Give us a like, share it with your friends, tell everybody about it, because I really think that this is fundamental, amazing knowledge that can really, truly help people. I love that. It's helping us. I really, really do. So thank you for your time this morning. Thank you for your time today, or whenever you're watching this. I don't know when you might be watching it at midnight. Who knows? But we really turn down the volume. The neighbors are complaining. But we really appreciate you joining us once again. Don't forget to follow us on all of our social media platforms, and we will see you soon. Tomorrow.